This video is brought to you by Squarespace. More on them at the end.
Raise a glass, you've made it another year.
Hey, it's the end of 2023. Congratulations, you made it. It was a big year for me. I got married, bought a house, hit 100,000 subscribers, and as for the games industry, well, I put my thoughts down into a wee poem. Snow is falling all around me, game execs are bloody scum, 'tis the season for love and understanding, but at least the games were good, so let's have some fun. Oh, and eat shit, Pete Parsons.
Raise your glass to another year.
As with every year, there were good games, great games, broken games, and whatever the hell Redfall was supposed to be. I didn't play them all, but I did pretty well, diving into 41 of the year's releases while launching a second channel, 7 critiques, and prepping for a mammoth 2024. Pats on the back for me, so I figured I'd take 14 of those games and stick them in a list for you to peruse, just in case you're wondering if there's anything you need to add to your backlog. This is in no particular order, and if you think there's something I missed, you're wrong. I'm avoiding remakes because this list is long enough. Starfield was my biggest disappointment of the year, and look, I'm glad Armored Core 6 was a belter, but I tried it and it wasn't for me, so stop asking me to cover it. Anyway, spin your favorite carol, grab a hot chocolate, and cozy in. Let's talk about the games that made my 2023.
Year.
Akira Yamaoka of Silent Hill fame composed the soundtracks to 2 horror games this year, Stray Souls and Decarnation. Stray Souls is a cauldron of piss, a pathetic shambling asset flipped corpse of a game that deserves to be lost to time. But Decarnation is something really special. It's a simple pixel art horror gem from Atelier QDB. It does the whole psychological horror is it all in your mind ooh shtick, while not forgetting how fun grossness can be when you're settling into a horror game. Don't expect anything mechanically deep here, but its story is fascinating, concentrating on the plight of our main character Gloria, who goes from a cabaret dancer in 1990s Paris to a hostage stuck in an incredibly creepy and somewhat realistic kidnapping scenario. If Dredge is the game that made me feel sick, Decarnation is the game that made me hug my wife. Like with a lot of the games on this list, it's a tricky one to sell without giving it all away, but you'll be able to pick it up cheap as chips, and if the gravelly visuals don't convince you, maybe the soundtrack will. Speaking as someone who spent a lot of the late 90s desperately trying to save lemmings from sinister weasels, humanity scratched every itch I forgot my 5-year-old self had. With a soothing soundtrack and a bloody calculated difficulty curve, I flew through its 15 hours and enjoyed every single second. You are a tiny dog tasked by ominous orbs to lead humans through over 80 stages until we reach Ascension. If that sounds bizarre and artsy, it's because it is. Between challenging puzzle rooms that hardly ever slow the player down and feel like blockades, the game chats away about existentialism and the human condition. Does it say much? I'd argue no, but it doesn't need to. You're not here to think about its philosophies, you're here to meditate on them while playing a dog that's leading these dumbasses into the light. It's my vibes game this year, and I'm already getting an itch to jump back into it, play as a dog, lead hundreds of lemmings off a cliff to collect the goldies so I can give my humans new hats, and if anything in that sentence sounds fun to you, please God, play this game.
How would you feel about helping me kill some evil bastards?
This is Captain Janus Longshaft. He's a high elf bard who once sailed the Sea of Swords with his dastardly crew before settling in Baldur's Gate. But now, he's wrapped up in an adventure of cosmic proportions, and he's gonna save the day with his namesake. Baldur's Gate 3 isn't just the greatest RPG of the year, it's the greatest RPG I have ever played. This isn't an empty universe with basic quests uninfluenced by the player while being full of procedurally generated glop. It's a land that is so dense that it feels like a continent. Your choices do matter in Baldur's Gate 3, and it's bloody beyond me how Larian Studios were able to get the game working as well as it did, while it remembered the hundreds of variables that made up my stamp on the story. Astarion, Shadowheart, Gale, Karlach, Lae'zel, I guess? I don't know, I got her killed like an hour in. I hear she's cool. No matter which party member you gravitate to, they all have multi-dimensional stories, histories, and narratives that weave, interweave, and overweave with each other and the NPCs you find camping in the woods or walking about town. I've only done one playthrough, and I was certain I'd seen and done everything, until I spoke to some friends and learned that I definitely haven't. The whole game is redesigned if you decide to play as a serial killer, for God's sake. I only have one criticism. I honestly wish there was a set of combat trials you could jump into after the story, because this is some of the best turn-based combat I've ever played. And I started to look forward to fights because of how varied the enemies were, how important the terrain becomes, and the astronomical wealth of options given to the player. It deserves every bit of praise tossed its way this year.
You're on a path in the woods, and at the end of that path is a cabin.
Black Tabby Games, the dev team behind Slay the Princess, sells this game better than I ever could, so let's rip out their Twitter post and slot it in here. You should play Slay the Princess because it has Jonathan Sims voicing 12 characters and arguing with himself, Nicole Goodnight, she'll make you cry, 3,300 lovingly hand-penciled illustrations. I don't know, it's a good game I think, pretty proud of it. It's a visual novel, but don't let that definition put you off. This is a slick, charming, witty, horrific, grisly, existential, choose-your-own-adventure game where your task is simple but the many consequences are damning. Slay the Princess. To say more is to spoil it, but it's cheap as chips and well worth the price of admission if you want to creep yourself out, enjoy some gorgeous music, and admire the unique art style. It starts with a shipwreck and a lighthouse. An hour of fishing later, and everything starts to feel a little bit off. Maybe it's the fact the fish you're catching seem less like fish and more like rotting, mangled jelly, or the fact a mysterious collector can grant cosmic powers. Or maybe you just don't like the noises coming from the ocean when the fog closes in. Whatever the reason, Dredge seeps with sickly unease, and once it got its claws into me, it wouldn't let me go. It's a dense, creepy puzzle box that encourages you to conquer its landscape and uncover its mysteries. Not only does upgrading your fishing boat constantly feel meaningful, but the sense of mastery that those upgrades give you are challenged by whatever new, weird thing is waiting on the game's shores or waves. With writing that's both clever and disturbing and characters that constantly had me questioning, I sank deeper and deeper into figuring out the cogs of its world, and best of all, it didn't overstay its welcome. In a year of great horror, this is the one that felt most eerie. You can smell the stink and taste the cosmos.
Let's rock.
Who'd have thunk that when Shinji Mikami told us that Tango Gameworks was working on a game that was, quote, the complete opposite of horror, what he meant was the coolest game of the year. 2023 has been dominated by Tears of the Kingdom's insane physics engine, but Hi-Fi Rush's ambition is way more at home on my playlist. On paper, it's a rhythm action game, but saying that out loud sounds far too tepid for how effortlessly Hi-Fi Rush pulls off its core gimmick in a colourful and stylish world. You are Chai, a lovable scamp who sees the world as one big musical thanks to a robotic augmentation gone wrong. The player controls the rhythm and beat of the soundtrack during combat with numerous power-ups, combos, and spectacle that evolves relatively simple hacking and slashing into a vigorous, capital F, fun and surprisingly challenging battle system. But the fact the level pulses to the beat or Chai's attacks add rock and roll to the score is only half of the battle. Not only is this a surprisingly big game with a whole endgame section leading to a secret ending, it's also a really funny one. Charismatic corpo villains you can't wait to punch, earnest friends that ground Chai when he veers into becoming one note, scenarios like fighting a gigantic robot to 9-inch nails. It's unlike anything I've played this year. I'm not someone who cares about getting high scores in games like this, but with Hi-Fi Rush, I was always aiming for top billing.
Fear and mistrust rule the galaxy.
Something bugs, something unfinished. I can't sit here with a straight face and tell you Star Wars Jedi Survivor is a Game of the Year contender, and I definitely can't say it released in a state worthy of your money. But I replayed it for my critique, link below, and when I did, I found that all of the launch issues didn't take away from its breathtaking vistas, fun as hell combat, and addictive world design that keeps up a sense of awe from the beginning to the end. I've poured over 90 hours into Survivor to date, and while I still suck at the combat and roll my eyes every time I need to clamber up a wall, I didn't regret a single minute of the journey to 100% completion. It's just a damn fun video game that feels classical in its design philosophy, but I also think it makes earnest attempts to improve all of my gripes with its predecessor, Fallen Order. If the Jedi series is the only way I experience Star Wars from now on, that's fine with me. I don't think of Frictional Games as being the team that made Amnesia: The Dark Descent. I think of them as the team who made one of my favorite games of all time, SOMA. But The Bunker proves that they can do classic survival horror every bit as well as they can harbor existential dread. This is a horror sandbox for you to play in. Lost in a World War I bunker, your job is to escape, figure out what happened here, and survive the clutches of the grisly beast lurking down there with you. It's the creativity that's most addictive here. If you're faced with a locked door, you can just blow it off its hinges. There are a few ways to scare the beast off, the challenge is finding them. I devoured this thing in one night and have hopped back in a couple of times since to flex my survivalist muscles. It's just good to see that Frictional have still got it. If Humanity is a puzzle game that renews an old concept, Cocoon is a puzzle game that strides into the next generation with how it wants you to think and how awe-inspiring its tech is. You are a moth bug thing that can carry worlds on its back, enter those worlds, and take other worlds into those worlds so you can teleport between worlds. I refuse to elaborate. Well, okay, fine, I'll elaborate a little bit. Cocoon's beauty lies in its tactical complexity and its physical simplicity. You only need 2 buttons, one to move your little moth and another to interact with stuff. That's it, meaning all of your attention is spent on understanding how its many keys fit into its many locks, while juggling the many different worlds you can place around the levels. There are points where you have many worlds to use, each with a different power-up, and you need to swap them inside each other and loop back to the starting point so you can get everything exactly where you need it. It's a difficult game to explain, but damn if it isn't satisfying to beat. Gaming has had a lot of heroes this year, Spidey, Clive, Pinocchio, but none of them stole my heart the same way Garl did. He's just one member of your party in Sea of Stars, a turn-based RPG that's reminiscent of classics like Chrono Trigger, but from his theme to his smile to his wide-eyed optimism and goddamn refusal to be confined by the hero's journey, he is my personal standout. But even without Garl, Sea of Stars would be a Game of the Year contender in an overflowing year. It was designed to be how you remember those classic turn-based games of the good old days, rather than a straight-up homage. It's pacey, its writing is joyful and witty and silly, it takes some truly weird turns, and has a 100% completion reward that made me cry. It's best to go into this one blind and just let the waves take you away, but I cannot recommend it enough if you want to sink into an RPG for a week.
Can you hear me? I hope this reaches you. This city is falling apart.
Bloodborne is dead. Long live Puppetborn! Okay, that's not entirely true. Lies of P isn't a Bloodborne replacement, because it's not really trying to be. The city of Krat will remind you of the city of Yharnam, but if you play it like you played Bloodborne, you're gonna have a bad time. The focus is less on dodging and more on guard blocking, perfect parries, and swapping out the right equipment for the right type of bad guy. It comes with its own unique ideas like the weapon system that lets you combine various different handles and blades to fit your playstyle, and there are heaps of options for you to mix and match, meaning I always felt like I had the answer to a challenge somewhere in my inventory. But if I'm being frank, the combat, while fun, isn't why it's on this list. Lies of P is the first Souls-like ever that I think can stand toe-to-toe with From Software. The level design and atmosphere is right up there, but it's a little more narrative-driven than those games. The characters and quests are less vague, crucial details aren't hidden in item descriptions, they're laid out plainly for us to see. If a player falls in love with Krat the same way that I did, they can still find more juicy lore in the menu, but the simplicity of its narrative made me actually give a damn about where all of this was going. And don't even get me started on what the sequel has in store. If you know, you know.
Miles, this is crazy! We call it a symbiote. And it chose you.
I have my problems with Spider-Man 2, and I'll be laying them out clearly when I do a deep dive next year, but somehow, some way, I couldn't bring myself to knock it off this list. I bought the 19 inches of Venom, I found every Spider-Bot, and I webbed up every mugger or arsonist I could find, and I loved every inch of it. Does it have some missed potential? Yes. Does it unnecessarily cut cool stuff from the first game that should have been carried over? Also yes. But watching Peter and Miles deal with the dark side of a hero complex, mixed with great additions to getting around New York and some stellar boss fights, made it so I couldn't put the game down. It wasn't just the big moments that made me feel like Spider-Man, it was the little moments too. Sitting with an old man on a bench after he wandered off and got lost, soaring with pigeons across the bay, Peter getting to see a world where his great power doesn't need to include sticking to walls, and Miles understanding that great responsibility has more dimensions than he first thought. Maybe it's my Spidey bias, but yeah, just like the first game, it's an imperfect marvel, and it's some of the most fun I had this year. This is a weird, very clever little game that scratched my outer wilds and tunic itch. Chants of Sonar puts you in the robes of the traveller who's come to this strange land inspired by the Tower of Babel, where language is your greatest obstacle. Armed with nothing but a journal, a pen, and the X button, the player's job is to figure out what all of these odd symbols mean from context clues, chatting to the locals, and digging up the mysterious and sinister society that it's all built on. Just like with Slay the Princess, saying more would spoil the craft and shockingly good player conditioning within. But don't skip this one when you're looking back on the year. There's magic inside.
Wake says the story will change reality around us. Why are we written into the story?
Normally, I don't like to put these lists into a hierarchy, but Alan Wake 2 is my game of the year. Don't worry, I won't spoil anything here and I'm just using trailer footage and not Eurogamer, but as a long-time Remedy fan who's waited 13 years for this sequel, it met my expectations, exceeded them, and then kept exceeding them right until the credits rolled. I am still struggling to put into words how much I love it, and I'm sitting on a long list of thoughts that will eventually come out to my critique next year, but it goes beyond the lake in more ways than one. Primarily because you can feel how much of a team effort Alan Wake 2 is. Sam Lake might be the figurehead, but Alan Wake 2 is all Remedy all the time. It's weird, it's beautiful, it's funny, it's terrifying, it's something entirely different. It's the confidence that still gets me. It's a bizarre fever dream of a game with a story that keeps you on the edge of your seat, legitimate tension that's expertly paced, a treasure trove of information that's ripe for lore hunters to uncover, and most importantly of all, it's just a damn good survival horror game. The tropes are here both narratively and mechanically, but Remedy have put their own spin on all of them. Gun upgrades are treated like a narrative device. There's an original soundtrack with songs and lyrics that directly reference events in the game. Some of the highest highs of any game I've played are locked in here alongside some of the most harrowing fights and emotional lows that hurt me in places that I didn't even know I could be hurt. If you want to play a horror game that effectively makes you feel like you're going insane, this is the one for you. Please play this game. And if you want to get caught up on the story so far, well, my second channel, Lore Dump, where we take someone who hasn't played a game and walk them through the full story, is in the description below. Here's a quick clip.
It doesn't help your dislike of Nightingale that they've designed his face. Apologies to the actor, because I know this is mocapped. They've designed his face to look like your least favourite maths teacher.
100%. That is a great way to describe Nightingale, your least favourite maths teacher. So he appears, he points his gun, again I'm quoting from the game here, he points his gun through the window, right? So from where he is, he can see Pat Main and Alan's like silhouettes through the window. Oh my God. And he points the gun at it, and he just starts yelling, and he's like, "Nowhere to run now, Dan Brown!" He starts waving his gun around.
Why you've gone for sort of whatever you think of Hemingway, a sort of writer of American classics, to one of the worst reviewed popular authors ever. What's the theme here? Is it just any?
Love Dan Brown.
Okay, we'll talk about this afterwards. Yeah,
I quite like Dan Brown too. I find it quite entertaining. Yes, you think you're alone.
The man writes like a 6-year-old.
It's very, very accessible.
The man walked into the bright red room. It's all like.
It doesn't have to be good to be popular. Look at J.K. Rowling. Sorry, what? Anyway. I think the majority of our audience are pretty on board with that, so it's fine. Anyway, so Nightingale calls him Dan Brown. He's waving his gun around and is like, "I'm gonna shoot him. I'm gonna do it. I hate Alan Wake for reasons unknown." And then Sheriff Breaker steps out behind him and is like, "All right, cool your jets. Jesus Christ, we got him." But Nightingale just straight up fires into the Radio Shack. He just misses Pat Main. Yeah, he shoots into the shoots in the Radio Shack. The bullet whizzes past Pat Main's head, doesn't hit anybody, and Pat Main drops to the ground, raises his hands in the air and goes, "Judas Priest!" And in the confusion, Alan makes his escape out the back, and as he runs, we hear Nightingale in the night yelling, "I'll get you, even if it kills me! You hear me? H.P. Lovecraft!" What? Wow. He's the best character, I love him. And there you have it. If you're a subscriber, thank you so much for your support this year. I still can't believe we hit the 100k mark, and I've got a busy 2024 planned with some of the most ambitious videos I've ever done. That'll all be starting with my System Shock remake critique. After some requests, I'm currently trying to organize my setup so I can live stream every minute of creating it. From playing the game, to researching, to writing, recording, editing, the whole shebang. Should be fun. Or hellish. Probably hellish, but that's future Monty's problem.
Raise your glass to another year.
Before we finish up, I want to talk about this video's sponsor, Squarespace. In about a month, it'll be time for us all to face the gaseous cloud of New Year's resolutions. Mine's pretty simple. I want to eat healthier and get lore dumped to 10,000 subscribers. Squarespace cannot help with the first one, but it definitely can with the second. It's the leader in website design, arming you with the tools to make something slick, sexy, and eye-catching so you can carve out your own little corner of the internet. If you're an artist, budding content creator, or sell a product or service, Squarespace is the best way to create a window into what you do. The big thing I keep highlighting is how easy it is to use. My website's built in Squarespace and it took barely a couple of hours. There are templates, designer fonts, every color you can imagine, all ready for you to drag and drop into place and tweak so your site feels unique. And for you business owners, it even comes with tools that let you manage branded email campaigns and social posting through its various plugins. It's affordable, but worth every penny. If you want to get started, just click the link in the description to start a free trial, and if you love it like I do, then you can enter the code MONTYXANDER to get 10% off.
One day you're young, and then they say you're aged like wine or tan as leather. Now we face our greatest fear. Raise your glass to another year. Friends and loved ones gathered here. Raise your glass to another year.